Hello, today I'll be talking about the book Artemis Fowl, The Last Guardian by Ian Colfer. To my opinion, it's a great book. In total, there are 8 books in the New York Times bestselling series Artemis Fowl, and this book is my favorite in the series. It's an easy read, it's funny, it's full of action and tension, with the threat of extinction of the entire human race in the hands of a 16-year-old criminal mastermind, a rogue lower elements police captain, and a 6-foot-tall, 240-pound bodyguard training various martial arts. The world really doesn't have a chance. But beware, I will spoil the entire book for you. But carry on watching if you'd like to. So many times in this book have I thought, how are they going to get out of this one? But with the creative mind of Ian Colfer, Artemis and his friends always find a way to cheat death again and again. Moving on. First off, the genre. This book is 100% a sci-fi fantasy book. Why? Well, first off, there are trolls, there's a centaur, there are fairies, pixies, goblins, dwarves, there's magic, resurrection, cloning, time travel, people being possessed. It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, just look at all that stuff. Things like this don't happen on a daily basis, or really ever. At all. Next, the setting. Artemis Fowl is set in Ireland at the Fowl Estate. The Fowl Estate is on the outskirts of Dublin, and this book happened present day. You can tell that it's present day by mankind's need for technology, and the chaos that happens when all mankind's technology is taken down. Next up, the protagonist and the antagonist. Artemis Fowl is a 16-year-old criminal mastermind, or juvenile genius as Artemis prefers to call himself. He's been causing problems for the fairy kind for 4 years. It started when he was 12 and kidnapped a fairy in this book, Captain Holly Short of the Lep Recon, for a fairy ransom. He got his ransom, escaped, and got himself put on the #1 most wanted criminal in Haven, above Mulch Diggums. He and Holly Short later became friends and went on to have many more adventures, including going to another dimension, going back in time, going to Atlantis, going to the Arctic, many other things. In the 4th book, the reader is introduced to a new criminal, Opal Cowboy. She's a pixie who's been making technology for everyone and has been doing all sorts of illegal activities. She's also the main antagonist in the 6th book, the 7th book, and the 8th book. This one right here. In this book, the older Opal is in prison in Atlantis, but the younger one is still loose. The Haven City police are contacted by 2 gnomes who are holding the young Opal hostage, and tell the Haven City police that they have 15 minutes to release the older Opal. Let me explain this to you. The younger Opal and the older Opal are in the same time, but one is from a different time. The quantum laws dictate that if one person has 2 copies of themselves in one time, and the younger one is killed, this would make everything the older version of the person made in the time after the younger version was killed explode, and the older version of the person be sort of evaporated. All the person's magic has to escape, which would cause a very, very big explosion. But what happened with Opal is that she was put into a chamber for radioactive material, and when the younger version of herself was killed, all her magic swelled around her, and she didn't die. But all of a sudden she had so much magic, she was practically unstoppable. Opal went to the Fowl Estate to the Berserker Gate to free the Berserkers. The Berserker Gate is the gate which leads to the underground fairy city called Haven. There are 2 locks on the gate, and 2 locks to make sure the humans will never reach Haven. The first releases the Berserkers, and the Berserkers protect the gate. The second will release the power of Danu, the Berserker god. Releasing the power of Danu will kill every single human on the planet, but no fairies or anything. Artemis's job is to stop Opal from opening the second gate. Yeah, that's right. That's the character's basic problem. This conflict would be character versus character. Let's look at a couple other minor characters. Well, can't really call them minor. I would call them slightly smaller protagonists. Because it's just not Artemis. It's Butler and Holly too. Let's start with Holly. She's a stubborn lower elements police captain that always somehow gets pulled into all of Artemis's affairs. Holly is a fairy, and she's the only female in the LEP Recon. LEP Recon stands for Lower Elements Police Recon. Holly met Artemis by being kidnapped by Artemis when he was 12. Eventually, Holly and Artemis became friends, and maybe a little more than that. It's hard to tell with Holly. Next, Butler. Butler has been Artemis' bodyguard since the day Artemis was born. Butler is 6 feet 4 inches tall, weighs 240 pounds, and looks like he could throw a train. Butler has been trained in various martial arts, including karate, taekwondo, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, and various types of wrestling. He literally is a rock. He is stuck next to Artemis through everything, illegal and legal. There really isn't anything that can beat Butler. Holly and Butler are both round characters because they are as important to the story as Artemis himself, so the author had to develop them a lot. Artemis Fowl the Last Guardian is a third-person book. Here's an example. Let's stick to your disposition, shall we, Artemis? Argon snagged a stack of cards from his file. I'm going to show you some ink blots, and you tell me what the shapes suggest to you. Artemis's moan was extended and theatrical. Ink blots? Oh, please. My lifespan is considerably shorter than yours, Doctor. I prefer not to waste my valuable time on worthless pseudo-tests. We may as well read tea leaves or divine the future in turkey entrails. Inkblot reading are a reliable indicator of mental health, Argon objected. Tried and tested. Tried and tested by psychiatrists for psychiatrists, snorted Artemis. I would definitely give this book a 5 out of 5. This is a good book. I think the message of this novel is that no matter how bad your odds are, you can always triumph. The theme in this novel is definitely suspenseful. Here's an example. Remember your orders, the elven warlock had told them all those centuries ago, even as the clay was falling on their flesh. Remember those who have died, and the humans who have murdered them. Oro did remember, and always would, just as he could never forget the sensation of stones and earth rattling across his dying skin. We will remember, he said into the spiral. Remember and return. The thought drifted down, then echoed up from the dead warriors, who were eager to be released from their tomb and see the sun once more. Right, now for the summary. The author quickly sets off the stage with a story about long-dead fairy warriors called berserkers, whose souls have long awaited to be brought back to the world to die, and for their souls to be finally set to the afterlife after 10,000 years of the ground. That is the prologue of the story. The first chapter starts with Artemis in the J. Argon Psychiatric Clinic. He has been going there to treat his case of Atlantis complex, which is a disorder where everything has to be in fives. It also comes with multiple personality disorder and irrational fear of number 4. The words Atlantis complex have 15 letters, which is 5 times 3 and 5 syllables. Artemis is diagnosed completely healthy and heads to see Holly, who is with a clone of Opal, which is nicknamed Noble because she has no pal. Clones are born without a soul and without a proper functioning brain, so most clones are going to die within a couple of days after they are born. Holly is called to the police plaza because Foley, the technical consultant of the Lower Elements Police, who's also a centaur, has spotted Opal. Holly, Artemis, and Butler all rush to the police plaza to find 2 gnomes holding the younger Opal captive over a satellite link. Opal is killed, and Artemis realizes that the 2 gnomes are at the Fowl estate, so he, Butler, and Holly rush to the surface. When they arrive, they find the older Opal has opened the first lock of the Berserker Gate, which releases the Berserkers. The Berserkers' bodies have long disintegrated, so they possess anything they can find. Animals, bugs, dead bodies, mummies that Artemis' dad stole, dead pirates, Butler's sister Juliet, who is trained also almost as well as Butler is. Even Artemis' brothers, Beckett and Miles. The Berserkers try to possess Artemis and party, but are sucked into a hole into the ground by no one other than Mulch Dickens, a dwarf that likes to steal things, but is friends with Artemis and Holly. So once again, Mulch saves the day. Artemis and party tunnel into the wine cellar, which, with the help of Mulch Diggums, they break out of the cellar and put the house in siege mode, which means no one can get in. Butler grabs some guns, and Artemis sends a message through a biotech dragonfly that Foley designs to Foley, and tells Foley what to send him. Artemis makes a plan to destroy the Berserker Gate, so the second lock won't open. The plan is to go to the barn on the hill across the lake where Artemis has a solar-powered plane with high-powered laser on it. So Artemis, Holly, and Butler go to the barn, only to find the battery missing of the plane. Without the battery, the plane will fly. Juliet, now possessed by a Berserker, attacks the barn, but who comes to save the day again? Mulch, riding a troll. The troll pushes the plane down the hill, the plane lifts off, and flies back to the manor. The plane crash lands just in front of the front step. They disembark, and they go inside the manor. An hour later, Holly comes up to Artemis and tells him she knows what he's going to do, and that it will kill him. Artemis doesn't care, and says he's going to do it anyway. Holly says that she will do it, Then Holly drugs Artemis to keep Artemis from going. And then Artemis somehow drugs Holly and kisses her. He leaves to save the day. Artemis arrives at the Berserker Gate with the unconscious Holly and surrenders. And save him, but Artemis tells Butler to grab hold of her, because if Holly went into the spell, she would die. Holly is confused because Artemis is human. The spell shouldn't affect him, but Artemis has a fairy eye. So Artemis gets sucked into the spell and dies. 6 months later, Butler, Holly, and Foley come to the place where Artemis died. They brought with them a clone of Artemis that Foley made in his lab using the DNA of Artemis that was on Holly's cheek after Artemis kissed her. And they attempt to put the soul of Artemis into the body of the clone, technically resurrecting Artemis. A few minutes pass, and nothing happens, but eventually, the clone starts to breathe, and he gets up and is confused on what's happening. The clone of Artemis has no memory of anything he had to do with everyone around him. It all started in Ho Chi Minh City one summer. It was sweltering by anyone's standards. Needless to say, Artemis Fowl would not have been willing to put up with such discomfort if something extremely important had not been at stake. Important to the plan. I was curious about what the sentences were, and had a couple ideas in my head, so I went and checked the first book and read the first couple of sentences. They were the exact same. At this point, I realized that the entire series is a loop, so the readers can keep on enjoying Artemis Fowl again and again. I also realized that the entire series was narrated by Holly. The book ends with Artemis asking Holly how they met, so Holly starts by saying a couple of sentences that the reader recognizes from somewhere, but just can't place where they came from. Artemis Fowl the Last Guardian was a very good book. It had action from the start to the very end. It just didn't stop. Like the New York Post said, it will grab your interest no matter what your age. Bye!